Hello, I'm Jeff Bate-Borup, reporting for the NB Media Co-op. The Town of Riverview plans to buy a new pair of buses while also improving transit shelters, hiring a transit coordinator, and adjusting its bus routes. Town councillors approved a set of recommendations following a presentation by David Forsey, a Toronto-based transit consultant. Riverview, part of the Greater Moncton area, has very limited public transit services. There are currently just 2 weekday routes and 2 weekend routes. The frequency of trips ranges from every 35 to 40 minutes on the 86 Pinewood to just 3 trips per week on the 82 Riverview Place. The town currently owns just 2 buses, with another one on order and expected to arrive later this year. The purchase of 2 new buses would bring the southeast New Brunswick community's total fleet to 5 buses and would cost an estimated $1.8 million. Local ridership has recovered from the lows experienced by transit services around the world at the height of the COVID-19 crisis. In fact, Forsey said, it has been growing rapidly and now exceeds pre-pandemic levels. His report stopped short of recommending that the town implement free public transit service, something that at least one town councillor has been calling for. NB Media Co-op reporter David Gordon Koch was at the town council meeting on Monday, January 13th. He spoke to Mayor Andrew LeBlanc about the plans. Stay tuned for that interview, followed by uncut footage from the council meeting.
So the Town of Riverview recognized that our public transit system needs to grow at the same rate that the municipality is growing, and so last year we began the process of commissioning a study to review the entire transit system. So this evening we were able to hear the presentation of that report, which does include the purchase of new buses as well as some other capital expenditures that would include enhancing some existing bus stops, looking to hire a transportation coordinator for the Town of Riverview who would help oversee and implement some of these new measures as well, all intended to improve access to public transit and the efficiency of the system within the town.
So the recommendations put forward by the consultant today were adopted by town council, essentially.
That's right. And from here, the staff are going to bring back a financial report on how everything will be impacted from the capital and operating budgets. And we'll see what that looks like. But yes, tonight's motion gave direction for staff to start proceeding with the recommendations that were included in the presentation. So we have 2 different routes that we have running in Riverview. And so we have enough buses to equip the existing routes. I think the recognition from council is that the existing service isn't enough. And so in order to enhance that system with the rate that Riverview has grown, and the demand that exists, we need more buses to be able to provide a better and more efficient service.
And there was talk of free bus service. The consultants recommended against that. Is that idea still on the table?
It's come up in discussions around budget deliberations. No formal recommendation has been given from council to pursue that. I think some individual councillors are certainly interested in pursuing it, but there's been no formal recommendation. But if that's something down the road that is deemed to be an asset, it's certainly something council will consider at the time. But for the time being, it's not something we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Is it something that you're interested in?
This is something that I'm interested in. I'm interested in anything that'll help improve the transit system. And if we can do that without impacting our taxpayers and do it cost effectively, I think our council's always going to be open to new ideas, and I would be open to new ideas. It's just got to make sense within the budget. We recognized that the system needed some improvements, and so we had, on the recommendation of staff, commissioned a study and a review, of the transit system last year. And so this is the culmination of all of the work that went into that.
Why is transit important for the Town of Riverview and the community?
Sure. Well, as a growing community, we have lots of folks that are moving into town. We have seniors who are retiring here. We have young people who are trying to set up their first residence, whether it's an apartment or a house. And transportation is something that is incredibly important for that process, especially when we look at immigration trends and how people are accessing particular services throughout the town. Not everybody has a vehicle. As the economy is changing, we know not everybody can afford a vehicle as well. And so it's incumbent on us to make sure that we are providing as many resources as we can. It's also in line with the town's strategic plan because we're looking at energy efficiencies, greenhouse gas emission reductions. We're looking at how do we grow the town in a sustainable way. Public transit plays a very big role, as does active transportation, and these are pillars in our existing strategic plan. So all part of the grand vision for Riverview's growth.
With the world events, the 25% tariff threat from President-elect Trump, and so on. Are you concerned that these costs, might change soon?
Well, I mean, I think the sooner we can lock in prices and make motions like we did tonight to get these purchases in, once we've signed an agreement to purchase the assets, then the price is the price. So if we can get that done before some of these economic changes hit us, then we certainly want to do that. But there's certainly an awareness of what that could mean economically. I think we tend to think in terms of the country and how that impacts broader things, but there are municipal impacts too, right? This impacts us on a day-to-day basis as citizens, as residents. It'll impact us municipally as well, as we're looking to fulfill the capital obligations that we have. Even big projects like the recreation complex and purchasing supplies and material for that. Is there going to be an impact on that, and will that drive up our costs ultimately and impact our budget? Yeah, it's possible, and that's certainly a worry.
Item 8, petitions, presentations, and delegation. We have a presentation from the Riverview Transit Riverview Transit Service Review, and our presenter here is David Forsey of Arcadis Professional Services.
Welcome. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. We've been waiting for this one for a while, so we're very excited to have you here tonight, and we'll turn the podium over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of council. My name is David Forsey, and I'm a principal at Arcadis in our mobility advisory practice in Toronto, and I was also the project manager for this assignment looking at Riverview Transit. This presentation summarizes our assessment of transit in Riverview, including a review of service as it exists today, an examination of existing stop infrastructure and amenities, recommendations for changes to routes, and an implementation plan to make these changes happen. We believe that these changes will result in a more useful, efficient, and ultimately more highly patronized transit system. But first, some background about the service. Transit usage in Riverview is increasing rapidly. Ridership is now completely recovered from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and now exceeds 2019 levels. Average monthly ridership is now 3 times higher than during the lows of the pandemic, and average monthly ridership last year was some 30% higher than in 2023. This growth is not unique to the tri-community area. Overall ridership on Kodiak Transpo was also approaching full recovery by the end of 2023, but Riverview is experiencing some of the highest rates of growth. And it's in this environment that the town has elected to assess transit services with an eye to better understanding where riders are coming from and where they're going, assessing the overall performance of transit as a town-wide service, and recommending how transit might change in the future to support continued increases in ridership. Council has already taken the first step towards addressing growth and operational resilience by ordering 1 new bus to provide a spare in the event of scheduled or unscheduled maintenance. This new bus is expected to begin service later this year. The reason why we, as a consulting firm, were hired was to complete a third-party review of the operation and delivery of conventional transit in Riverview. To this end, our review consisted of several components. We conducted a technical review of the 4 routes in operation, including the areas they serve, their ridership, and their operational performance. We examined town-wide ridership data and inferred how transit riders move throughout the community, notably where they started and ended their trips. We proposed changes to bus routes and the amount of service delivered throughout the day to improve effectiveness of the system and ultimately increase ridership. We identified infrastructure improvements to help the town prioritize the experience of pedestrians and those accessing transit on foot. And finally, we identified a high-level financial plan that will guide the town's implementation of the proposed changes. So as I mentioned earlier, transit services in the town are delivered on 4 fixed routes, the 85, 86, 81, and 82. The 85 and 86 operate exclusively on weekdays, and the 81 and 82 operate mostly on weekends. Route 85 runs all day, Monday to Friday, in a clockwise hourly loop throughout the east and west Riverview without crossing into Moncton. It's the town's least productive route, meaning that it returns the least ridership for every hour of service delivered. Route 86 is the town's most productive route and the busiest route, running all day on weekdays, connecting the western side of Riverview to downtown Moncton. The route operates every 35 to 40 minutes, depending on the type of day or the time of day. Route 81 runs all day Saturday and during the day on Sunday, as well as one weekday evening trip, connecting the western side of Riverview to downtown Moncton. And Route 82 runs just 2 trips on Saturday and 1 trip on Sunday, connecting the neighborhoods along Coverdale and Hillsborough Road to downtown Moncton. So the map on this slide shows how ridership on those 4 routes is distributed across the stops they serve. Each circle represents a stop, and the radius of the circle is scaled to the sum of boardings and alightings at that stop. Or in other words, the bigger the circle, the more people are getting on and off at that stop. The main takeaway from this map is that transit travel patterns are overwhelmingly oriented to and from Moncton. The main transfer hub at the Avenir Centre has by far the most passenger activity, with more than 43,000 annual boardings and alightings, nearly triple the passenger activity at Riverdale Place, the second busiest stop. This means that a very large percentage of transit riders in Riverview either live in Riverview and travel to the North Shore or travel into Riverview from elsewhere in the tri-community area. Relatively little travel both begins and ends within Riverview. Other than the Avenir Centre, the most patronized stops are located at Riverview Place, as I mentioned, and Finley Park, with additional higher ridership corridors along Coverdale Road and Trites Road. These areas are all well served by Route 86. Some of the lowest ridership parts of town include East Riverview, which is only served on weekdays by the one-way hourly loop on Route 85. In addition to examining ridership patterns, we also conducted a review across several other dimensions of the service, the takeaways from which are summarized on this slide. First, as I noted earlier, ridership has been trending upward for the last several years. In 2024, average monthly ridership reached 9,800 passenger trips per month, compared to 7,600 in 2023, and only 3,000 during the depth of the COVID-19 pandemic. And while this ridership growth is very positive, there is a limit to what the town can deliver and how much additional ridership growth can be achieved with only 2 or even 3 buses in its fleet. At present, the service is operating at the absolute maximum amount that can be delivered during weekdays, with no ability to serve new communities, no ability to increase service levels, and no Riverview-owned spare buses in the event of operational issues. Route 86 is also operating at lower levels of on-time performance than the other routes because schedules are stretched to their limits. A fleet this small is not common. In fact, all of the peer systems that we investigated over the course of our review operate more than 2 buses, ranging from 4 in Caledon, Ontario and Fort St. John, BC, up to 8 in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Our review also found that Riverview invests in transit operations at a relatively low level, with the number of operating hours roughly 10% below its peer group. Since the amount of service offered is one of the major drivers of ridership, it's not surprising that Riverview also trails the peer average ridership as well, despite its close proximity to a much larger urban center. The flip side of this is that the ridership that is achieved is done so efficiently relative to its peers. The main takeaway from this analysis is that if the town is serious about doing more with transit, more investment in operations is needed, and that investment in operations can only be delivered if the town expands its fleet beyond the 3 buses it currently owns or has on order. So based on the findings of our review, we prepared a new service concept that will allow the town to better align service to observed demand patterns, improve on-time performance, deliver higher levels of service throughout the day and throughout the town, and improve operational resilience. This new concept would consist of 3 fixed routes that would not vary throughout the day or throughout the week. Each of these routes would connect a different part of the town with the Avenir Centre, which is a direct response to the ridership patterns that we observed in our analysis. So the central route, shown in green, would connect the area south of Gunningsville Boulevard to Moncton via Pine Glen Road. The east route, shown in purple, would connect Runnymede Road to Moncton via Hillsborough Road. And the west route, shown in orange, would loop around West Riverview, connect to Riverview Place, and then connect to the Avenir Centre via Coverdale Road. Aside from restructuring the routes to more closely follow demand patterns, the removal of most one-way loops and straightening out of route alignments means that passengers will be able to reach major destinations much more quickly, without having to double back over the course of their trip. This will make transit more convenient for users and help boost ridership. The new route structure is also much more simple to understand, with consistent route structure throughout the day and throughout the week. This will help make it easier for new riders to use the system for the first time. Each of the 3 routes would also have improved service 7 days a week, at intervals of 30 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on the time of day and day of week. And in addition to the fixed routes, we're also proposing 2 new taxi-to-transit zones that would serve low-demand areas in the Patricia Drive and Bridgedale neighborhoods. In these areas, service would be provided via a subsidized taxi trip from the passenger's place of residence to a predetermined transit hub in Riverview. The town would pay the taxi provider for these trips as they occur, rather than on a fixed hourly basis. And finally, the new network would be served by between 2 to 4 buses, depending on the time of day and day of week. More buses will be in service at times when service levels are higher. In addition to the review we conducted of transit service, Arcadis also conducted a review of the existing rights-of-way used by transit and the amenities and infrastructure available to support it. As part of this review, we conducted a desktop walkthrough of each street in the town served by Kodiak Transpo and made note of the state of infrastructure and amenities. In conducting the review, we found that many stops, including some higher ridership stops, lacked amenities such as shelters, benches, and garbage cans. This is not to suggest that all stops require these amenities, but increases in their deployment would help improve the passenger experience. More significantly, our review found many stops located on streets without sidewalks or on streets with narrow or discontinuous sidewalks. This poses a safety risk, particularly for riders with mobility challenges, and can make the experience of walking to and waiting for the bus very unpleasant and treacherous in inclement weather. Finally, we also found that some bus stops lacked clear signage about what route is served at the stop, and in at least one case did not have any signage at all. As part of our work, we also proposed different high-level conceptual streetscaping treatments to better define the elements of the right-of-way for different street typologies, arterial, collector, and local roads. These treatments consist of elements of different zones of the right-of-way, from road running way to planting and transit stop zones and pedestrian through zones. These conceptual treatments can help the town assess and prioritize different design elements during future reconstruction projects to ensure that pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users are able to navigate the town's streets safely and comfortably. There are a number of additional considerations for the town to facilitate implementation of the revised network and enhanced service. First, we recommend that additional oversight of transit operations and performance on the town's behalf be put into place. This can be achieved via a new transportation coordinator position who would spend half their time dedicated to transit. In this role, the coordinator would be responsible for administering the town's agreement with Kodiak and the taxi to transit provider, monitoring performance, coordinating route and service changes with Kodiak, and engaging with the community about their transit needs. 2 new buses will also need to be purchased in order to provide the service levels prescribed in this plan at a cost of $1.8 million, bringing the total size of the Riverview-owned fleet to 5. This is the single most important enabler of enhanced and more frequent service. Without these new buses, the 3 fixed routes would only be able to operate at a service frequency of once per hour. And because of the expected 18-month time frame to obtain and commission a bus from the time of purchase, the earliest that these vehicles can go into service is mid-2026. We also recommend the alignment of the weekend route network with the weekday route network in the short term. This change will help to improve the experience of shift workers and shoppers, reduce rider confusion associated with different weekday and weekend routes, and serve as a stepping stone to enhance weekend service when the new network is inaugurated in 2026. All told, the enhancements in this plan will result in a doubling of the number of service hours purchased by the town in 2026, which will roughly correspond to a doubling of the annual operating cost. We've also proposed a near-term capital program designed to improve stop amenities, particularly the installation of stop pads and shelters, which will cost the town roughly $350,000 over the next 5 years. We've also assembled a financial plan to accompany the implementation plan, illustrating expected annual operating expenditures for the town's investment in transit service. These estimates are derived from operating costs currently paid to Kodiak, fares paid by riders, existing ridership levels, and anticipated increases in ridership generated from the service increases and organic population growth. For the purpose of these estimates, both the average fare paid by customers and the hourly rate paid to Kodiak are assumed to remain fixed at present day levels. The largest increases in both annual operating revenues and annual costs are estimated to occur in 2026 and 2027. With the arrival of the two new buses in June of 2026, half of the calendar year is assumed to include service under the new network, increasing net operating spend by an estimated 35% over 2025 levels to an estimated $1.3 million. The next year, 2027, will then be the first complete calendar year with the new network, increasing net operating spend by a further 25% compared to 2026. The substantial majority of these operating costs will come in the form of payments to Kodiak Transpo, but we're also forecasting expenditures of $20,000 for the transit to taxi program based on current ridership levels, plus an estimated $40,000 to cover the fractional transportation coordinator position. We also understand that Council is interested in exploring the potential for free public transportation. As part of our review, we investigated the experience of systems that have implemented free transit, such as Orangeville, Ontario, Kansas City, Missouri, Salt Lake City, Utah, and several others. In all cases, removing transit fares resulted in substantial ridership increases, but at the cost of a substantial amount of revenue. We believe it's best to think of free transit as having an opportunity cost. Specifically, investing in free transit would mean either a reduction in existing service to remain cost neutral, or investing in additional operating budget that could instead be directed to improving service for everyone. To illustrate what this would mean in Riverview's context, making fares free would result in a loss of approximately $220,000 per year in revenue. This amount equates to about 2,000 annual service hours, or one bus on the road for 8 hours a day for every weekday of the year. This illustrates the magnitude of the investment that would be required and how that would translate to improvements to service quality. As a result, fare-free transit is not something that we can recommend as part of our review. If the town does elect in the future to provide transit for free, we recommend that it is done in such a way that does not sacrifice the amount of transit service being offered to customers. So wrapping up with our recommendations, the town should hire a transportation coordinator in 2025 with half of their time dedicated to monitoring and administering transit services in Riverview. The town should purchase 2 additional buses in 2025 in order to enable the service improvements described in our report and ensure there is sufficient operational resilience to provide reliable service. The town should begin constructing new concrete bus pads and installing bus shelters at high ridership stops. The town should discontinue service on routes 81 and 82 on weekends and instead deploy service on routes 85 and 86 7 days a week. The town should also begin preparing for the rollout of the improved service network by installing new bus stop posts and then inaugurating service on the new network as soon as new buses arrive in 2026. Ahead of the inauguration of the new network, the town should also begin operating taxi to transit service in the Bridgetail, Point Park, and Patricia Drive neighborhoods, which can be pilot tested in Patricia Drive ahead of the arrival of the new buses, since the area is not presently served by transit. As these service changes are introduced, the town's new transportation coordinator should monitor performance and growth trends to ensure service levels are appropriate. And finally, with a view to increasing ridership and service quality, the town should consider the future possibility of extending its routes in Moncton beyond the Avenir Centre should the Tri-Community Agreement allow it. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. A lot of great information. We appreciate all the work that went into this. Public transit is something that we know Riverview wants to continue to invest in and try and improve for residents. So we're certainly looking forward to what the future brings for investment in that. We'll open it to council for questions or comments at this time. And we'll start with Councillor Casisto.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. I was looking at one of your first recommendations, and I was looking at the ridership in the Crystal Drive area, and maybe the director might be able to help us on that one. And I didn't see that, it looked like, it appeared to me that that would be cut out when I was looking at that at the map. It wasn't clear. That is an Asian population, that's a seniors group that live down in that area. They had that bus service for more than 20 years. I could get the exact at this point, but I'd like some clarity on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have endeavored to conduct our review in the most objective way possible, looking at ridership data. And I think that's part of the benefit of bringing us in as an outsider. However, there may be some elements of local context that we were not able to consider as part of our review. And the details of that could be considered as part of the rollout of actual changes when the time comes.
Director Willett, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, that's correct. There might be some existing bus stops that will need to, I guess, be forego in order to improve the overall service improvement. However, when it comes to the Crystal Drive one, the bus route still considers Crystal Drive. So if you look at the map carefully, you can see that it's going to go down Strathmore and turn on to Suffolk and then come up Crystal. So that particular bus stop will resume, will be retained, I guess, with the new routes. So,
as I see this map, I mean, this was one of the recommendations, and I just wanted to make sure that I understood the recommended service for 2026. It appears to me that it would actually not go down in that area. It would be around Egg Roll King, but it doesn't appear that it's going down in the Crystal Drive area.
Crystal Drive is opposite Buckingham.
I'm looking at the slide that says recommended service network for 2026.
Yep. I'm looking at the same map, and I see it going down Crystal Drive across Buckingham.
So are you saying that it will continue at this point? Correct. Until there's further studies and whatnot on that?
Mr. Smith, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, Council, I guess I just maybe for today, I think you're debating, do you want to invest in 2 new buses? Do you want to expand the route? We're not going to be getting into the specifics of the exact route of where the buses are going, what streets today. Like, this is a general framework, but today we're wanting to find out, this is going to cost $1.8 million. That's not in the capital plan today. Another $350,000, another investment. Do you see those things? So there will be, that route change probably won't be implemented till 18 months away, till we can order and buy these buses if you endorse buying these buses. So, I mean, we can work through the details of where the route changes are. I think this is a bigger debate of, do you want to see this level of investment in service going forward?
And I appreciate your comments, Mr. Smith, on that. I just did not want to lose the vision of this area. We've had a situation where we packed this hall with seniors that were very concerned. They were losing their bus service. And Mr. Director, you will recall that time. So I just want to make sure, because we are an age-friendly community, I want to make sure that the aging population is being looked after.
Fair point. Thank you, Councillor. Director, did you have one more thing to add to that?
Well, I guess I just wanted to clarify that, yes, the route does continue on Suffolk.
Again, the specific routes is something that we'll discuss later. But Councillor Blackstock.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. The taxi to transit program, just for my knowledge, the town would subsidize a free taxi ride with a recognised taxi service from Patricia Drive area or Bridgedale to the nearest bus stop or to the bus stop of their choice. I guess that's question one. And how does that program work in other areas of Canada? Is it working well, or is it still in the pilot phase?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So to answer your first question, the specifics of the design of how this would work, again, could be developed in discussion with the taxi operator or with the town. But I would say in most cases, the way that this works is that anybody residing within the boundary that was actually shown on the slide would be eligible for a free taxi trip from that point of origin to usually one single designated transit stop. So it's not anywhere within the town. It's either the nearest stop or the nearest safe location where they could be dropped off. So that's to answer your first question. And to answer your second question, this is a program or a typology of transit service that has been in operation for decades at this point. There's lots of precedent for using it as kind of the very first step excuse me, to providing transit service in a community, usually where ridership is very low.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation this evening. I noted that all of the proposed routes go to Moncton to the Avenir Centre, and I did see that obviously that was a big radius bubble on your map because that's where all the routes go right now. Did you consider any direct routes to, say, the Moncton Hospital or other destinations across the river?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did. My understanding is that at present, it is not possible to operate routes in that fashion because of the way that the tri-community agreement is structured between Moncton and Dieppe and Riverview. Riverview buses must terminate at Avenir, and then riders must transfer to another service. However, as part of our review, we did recommend that possibility be examined as part of the renegotiation of the agreement because of the draw of some places that are located beyond the Avenir Centre. But my understanding, and perhaps the director can clarify or the CAO can clarify, that is not possible under the current agreement.
Mr. Smith?
This wasn't why I was put my name on the board, but I can answer that question. Again, just probably even to provide broader context to how transit services operate in Greater Moncton. So Kodiak Transpo is the operator of the transit services. The individual municipalities own all the buses that operate in their community. So we're obligated to buy our own. Dieppe is, Moncton is as well. So, and then we pay for the hours of service because Kodiak Transpo has the staff and the resources to do that. So that's how the arrangement is worked. So then Kodiak has an overlay of how the whole network integrates and works together. So the current agreement would be based on our buses traveling to another touch point within the Moncton system to then move passengers on and collect, and then everyone that's going to the hospital per se would be meeting up at the Avenir Centre to time up to go to the hospital from that point. So to his point, we can revisit that as we go through the agreement if that's a piece that is important to council to look at. Obviously, these are, that's almost the next step after seeing if this is the route you want to support as a council moving forward. So,
would we have had, as part of the study, data about how many Riverview riders, say, would have transferred off of one of our buses and then gotten onto a Moncton bus to go to the hospital to see where the end destinations of Riverview riders would have been?
Through the chair, unfortunately, that data was not available. That would have been the first thing that we looked at, but we only had boarding and alighting data.
Okay. So potentially in a future review here, it would be really nice to know where the end destinations are of our transit riders. That would, I would assume, help us to optimize the route any further. Obviously the town is going to continue to grow in various areas. How often would you recommend reviewing the ridership and the routes?
Through the chair, that is something that the new transit coordinator would do on kind of a rolling basis. It wouldn't be a fulsome review in the sense that in the same magnitude that we've done. I'm not suggesting that routes would be completely redesigned every month, but it's part of the overall operation and monitoring of the system that happens on an ongoing basis as data comes in from Kodiak. A more wholesale review, as we've done here, is typically done every 5 years, sometimes every 10 years.
Okay, thank you. I think you've answered the other questions. I took a quick look through the report. Obviously, there were some items in the report that weren't presented tonight, but the information's in there for the public if you want to get additional information. The last thing I'll note, obviously, I've been the one who's really been pushing the idea of free public transit here the last 2 years through the budget process. I appreciate your comments on opportunity cost. I don't have a question. I'll just note for my observation, the proposal shows the town, under these proposals, would subsidize the operating costs of transit between 84 to 86% over the next 4 years. So the idea of making it free is that 14 to 16% cost recovery ratio that's noted in the report. I think people don't realize how much we already subsidize transit. So I think it's worth people realizing that it is something that the town invests in quite heavily already. Thank you, sir, for your presentation this evening.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Smith.
I just wanted to provide a bit of historical context to the last time we did a bit of a review. We obviously didn't bring in a consultant, but we had done a survey with the users at the time. I think this was 2016, 17. And then Kodiak redesigned the route. So the reason I'm bringing this up is at the time, our two routes that existed before that review was a one route in East Riverview that went directly over to, would have been Highfield Square, not the Avenir Center at the time, but that would have been where it was going. And we had one from the west. And at the time, from feedback from residents and the decision council made at the time was the idea that people wanted a route that stayed within Riverview, that connected from east to west to allow people to stay within their community. And I guess what this review is showing us, and as validated by the data, is the driver of the users today is to get to where they work, where and we know that's still predominantly in the Moncton Dieppe area. So that internal route within Riverview was driven by our last review. And I guess this is just reinforced. The data doesn't show that translated into the level of ridership that was hoped with that change. But I just wanted to provide that context because we're really kind of, besides adding an additional route, meaning 3 routes running over, we're kind of returning to the model that was in place before that last change, which occurred probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question on some of the consultation that would have happened potentially with the Southeast Regional Service Commission. I don't know if they were a stakeholder that was a part of the discussions, but obviously they're looking at a regional transportation plan, and maybe Director Willett, this is better directed to you, but how would a regional transportation plan potentially impact what we're doing here with the loss of east to west service through Kodiak Transpo? Could that gap, not that it really exists per the review, but if that was something that was desired, do you think there's an opportunity to close that gap through whatever regional plan may get implemented?
Yes, there is. In fact, if you look at the routes as designed there now, and given the frequency of each route, so now Route 86 being our most popular route is still in a 1-hour loop, we'll say, and these routes being in a half-an-hour loop, a resident could get off the east bus and say, at a stop, get on to either the central bus or get onto the western bus. So, and still be in their across Riverview in less time than there is today off of Route 86. So it does require a transfer, but in terms of time to get across, these proposed routes will still meet that same time frame. Yes, you got. I'm going to say them wrong. Not the Planning Commission was consulted during the review, and it really not only looked at today's ridership, but also looked at where the growths are in Riverview, and really focused on those future growth areas as being a destination for the bus routes.
Thank you. Last question, I guess, would be more budget related. How would we absorb some of these recommendations are for this year? How would that look for our capital and operating budgets?
For the year 2025, we've already anticipated, so there's going to be very little capital cost other than the bus that we've already purchased in 24. It's going to arrive in 25, and so it's been budgeted for. The transit operator position has been budgeted for as well. So we're on, and then through that position, there'll be some minor work that'll happen in the background to try to get us ready for when those 2 new buses arrive in probably late 26 at this point. But it'll give us the opportunity to pilot the on-demand system, and again, that's been budgeted for 25.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions from council. We do have a motion attached to this, so I'll ask for a motion. Councillor Casista.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Riverview Town Council accept the report and proceed with the recommendation as presented by David Forsey of Arcadis Professional Services on January the 13th, 2025.
It's moved by Councillor Casista, seconded by Councillor Johnson. On the question. Mr. Smith.
I just want to follow up a bit on your, I'm just going to lay probably mine and Shannon's interpretation of this resolution, which would be, if it's endorsed, we would come back and present to you financially what that means and what that implication is for the 10-year plan. So that would be the action that comes out of this, to then you'd be able to see that. So.
Thank you very much. Councillor Casista.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one clarity dealing with the recommendations of the bus shelters, the benches. Is that something that can be dealt with in this budget, or it has to go to another budget?
So there has been some money set aside for 25 for those amenities, and we've actually started conversations with a company that is proposing to install benches in Riverview through some agreement, essentially at no cost to Riverview.
And you'll keep council up to date as that moves along?
And we will keep council up to date.
Okay, I don't see anybody else on the question. We'll call for the vote. And the motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Forsey. We appreciate the presentation, all the work that went into it.